I'm Bethany Monahan, and this is the Holistic House Podcast. Today, I am joined by Samie White. Samie is a passionate integrative health professional, a podcast host, and a business owner dedicated to exploring authenticity and the journey of life. With a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology from IUPUI in Indianapolis, Samie seamlessly blends expertise in pranic healing, innovation, wellness techniques, yoga, and coaching to empower her clients alongside their primary medical care, enhancing their overall health outcomes. She's a strong advocate for goal setting and stress reduction. Samie works closely with clients to identify their aspirations and implement practical strategies for improving their lives. Her holistic approach fosters personal growth and resilience, equipping individuals with the tools they need to thrive. Samie's journey began as a preteen when she discovered yoga and has since transformed it into her sanctuary amidst life's challenges. After navigating through life's transition, she pursued yoga training and she became a certified in various holistic practices, including pranic healing, which has profoundly changed her life. She now has an engaging podcast, and she invites listeners to embark on their own journey of self-discovery and healing. Her commitment to personal growth is matched only by her desire to help others find their own light and thrive. In today's episode, Samie and I talk all about authenticity. We dive deep into her journey back to her authentic self, what that means. She offers up some incredible tools for our listeners on how they can embark on that journey back to their true selves. Sit back and enjoy this insightful conversation about all things journeying back to the real you, the authentic you, with Samie and I. Hello. Welcome, Samie, to the Holistic House Podcast. I am so excited to have you on today. I know we've known each other for some time now, and there's so much that we could talk about, but really excited to dive into our topic for today's episode, which is all things authenticity, which is really Samie's middle name. I feel like it's Samie's branding, and who she be. And so I'm very honored to have you on the show to dive in.
Hi, Bethany. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be on your podcast. Welcome to the Holistic House. It feels so warm, loving, heart-opening. I'm so excited to dive into this topic of authenticity with you and see where the conversation flows.
Absolutely. And, I feel like this topic, this theme of authenticity is so incredibly relevant. And my hope and my prayer is that all of the beautiful listeners that are tuning in to this particular episode know and feel that they're in a safe space, that they're home. And it's just like other soul sisters that are just tagging along our conversation as it flows. Like you said, that's really the intention here today, is that we're just open and we share all things authenticity, what really is authentic to us and what that means. So I want to dive right in because there's so much we can cover with the theme of authenticity, especially in a world where we're yearning for more and more of it, for the change to happen that needs to happen. And I think authenticity can mean so much to so many people. So I'd love to hear from you, Samie. What does authenticity mean to you in this very season of your life, and has that definition evolved over time?
Oh, that's such a really deep question that can go in so many different directions. Um, but I guess simply, authenticity to me in this season of my life is being comfortable in expressing myself and, holding that space for the boundaries that I need and honoring that, no matter what perception or belief I have held in the past, or I recognize in somebody else. I think it's really just holding true to my truest form and my truest being, my truest expression. And I believe across time, I've been finding that. I think a lot of upbringing and a lot of, different beliefs and ideas from childhood can kind of sway your perception of who you really are and how to express yourself authentically. And um, I've been rediscovering that these last couple of years, especially like honestly in the last 6 to 9 months. I've been really learning who Samie truly is. And I'm remembering a lot from early childhood of that personality, that being that was, I would say, unshakable. She was, unshaped by the reality around her. And I believe as you start to work on yourself and uncover different beliefs, different blocks that you've picked up over the years, be that from environment, from education, from different experiences, you start to uncover that true being that lives underneath and has always been here to shine because you came into this life with a purpose. And part of that purpose is derived from the being that you chose to be in this lifetime.
Let's dive straight into that. Let's this podcast, we welcome all topics, and spirituality is certainly one of the pillars. And you kind of danced around this idea and this theme of peeling back these layers from childhood, these conditionings of maybe who others thought you should be, and kind of a byproduct of others' belief systems. You mentioned belief systems, and I think so much of who we be is a byproduct of who we believe we are, and that identity piece. And so you talk about this unraveling. I see it as this like beautiful untangling process that this journey that you've been on. I think I'd first like to ask, and for the listeners listening in, like, wow, I feel this to be true. So much of who I am and what I believe is a byproduct of my childhood, maybe my parents or friend group. For somebody who's journeying on this beautiful homecoming back to self, and with your experience and your journey, like, where did you start with that unraveling? Do you have any tools or anything that you utilize to help you start to untangle and unwind some of these belief systems that you had the awareness to realize were not actually you?
Yeah, so where did all of this start? This honestly all started right before I got a divorce
Mm.
back in, I think like 2021-ish, 2022. I started to realize that I wasn't expressing my truest form. I was negating the truth, and I am kind of a stickler on the truth. I don't like to lie. I mean, there are moments when you necessarily kind of have to like maybe tell part of the truth just to, be kind to somebody, or in a certain situation you might not tell all of it. But I was in a place where, my husband was actually asking me to lie for him,
Mm.
and it didn't feel good. And I was in a place where I would rather not know than have to like willingly lie about the situation and everything that was going on. And um, it kind of sent me into somewhat of a depression. And I really lost track of myself. And my friend is who really recognized that and pointed it out to me. And she was like, "You, ever since I've known you, have had this, this bubbly, uplifting, happy personality, and you seem like you're in this state of despair, and
Wow.
you're just a shell of a person." And I needed that. Like, I needed to hear that. And it brought me to this realization that I was not expressing my truest being. And after I decided to get a divorce, I dove a little bit deeper into finding myself. I was like, it seems like I kind of put myself on a shelf to fit into this little perfect little box of, being the perfect wife.
We're cel we're celebrating the journey. That was funny.
Being the perfect wife. That was such great timing. And like, trying to fit all these roles that I thought were expected to be a certain way. And one of the first tools that I found was this. So it's a program called To Be Magnetic, but they also have a podcast called Expanded. And I found the podcast. I've always been a big podcaster and listener, and now I host my own podcast. And they were talking about their process of what they do, and a lot of it's finding your authentic self.
Mm.
And they have this whole program that you can go through, and you can really do a lot of journaling, and you can do self meditations and self hypnosis, and they have a lot of science backing what they do. And so I started working on that, and I started uncovering the true aspects of myself. And I still do that program. I don't do it nearly as consistently as I did then, but I don't need it as much now because I know what I know, and basically I have the tools and I use them regularly. Months later, I was already practicing yoga regularly. It was my one stress reducer. And I always felt like I was at home with myself when I would do yoga, even through like the mental torment and all the issues I was dealing with in life. So I decided to do yoga teacher training. And that was another tool that incredibly changed my life. Not only do you learn to be an instructor, but you learn a lot about yourself. You learn a lot about other people. You build a really trusting community. And there are certain lessons that you can learn in yoga that can be really beneficial to just like living an ordinary life, but also to connecting to your soul self and to your body, because yoga is a physical practice, but it's also a spiritual practice in itself. And when I get on the mat, I'm letting everything in the here and now in the world go, and I'm connecting with my body, and I'm connecting with my higher soul. And for those who don't really understand what higher soul means, is like your truest self. So when you like peel back your personality and all the different layers, it's kind of like that a little voice in your head that's like, hey, don't turn that direction.
Mm.
So that was a big tool, a big turning point in um, I guess my finding myself and my change. And that fall, I was introduced to meditation on twin hearts. Now, I had been practicing different forms of meditation for stress reduction, stress relief. I took courses in stress reduction, and I know all kinds of techniques. I know like progressive muscle relaxation, using sound bowls, tuning forks, just all kinds of stuff. I tried a lot of different things, and I found meditation on twin hearts, and it really started to shift me a lot. I was following Master Co on YouTube, and that was the fall of 2022. That really started to change my habits. It started to change my thinking. I was just listening to he has these little talks before he does the meditation, and I was listening to his guidance, and it was really changing my life a lot. I wasn't always doing the meditations, and I also learned that I wasn't doing them right. But they still made a difference in my life. It's funny how that happens. So my character was changing, and I was recognizing things that didn't fit in my life. And one of those things was drinking. I was drinking to cover up feelings that I was having. And I ended up taking a step back from that and changing that habit. I also was in a relationship that was really great, but I recognized deep down that it wasn't for me. And I, had to take a bold step to step out of it. And we mutually agreed to it, which was really great. But, you know, that can be challenging to just be like, you know what, I'm going to do this by myself for a while and keep learning more about me. So I started taking pranic healing classes. And I'm still doing all of these other tools in the background, right? And pranic healing took it to a whole nother level. There were a few lifestyle shifts that really impacted me a lot. I was already very active. I exercised regularly. Um, I worked in clinical research, so I had to coach patients and diet, exercise. So I was already eating pretty well and doing well by myself. But it made me take a second look at what I was eating, why I was eating it, um, what choices I was making, the people I was spending time with, and what was more important to me. I just started reflecting on the simplest things, and I realized that I was spending a lot of time on stuff that wasn't as important to me as what I really truly wanted. Um, and something that you learn in basic pranic healing is that we all have energetic cords. Some people connect cords consciously and subconsciously, and we have cords between our friends and our loved ones, and different energies flow to different places. And sometimes the energies of other people can be more influencing than your own energies, especially if you're, for instance, down and out, feeling depressed or feeling low. You may be more influenced by others' energies than your own. So I started to recognize this because I started cutting those cords.
And for those
And
listening, just to clarify, a cord is an energetic, something that we can't necessarily see, but it's an energetic exchange happening between others and a flow of energy and typically emotions, thoughts, things of that nature coming towards you and are connected to your energetic body. And so you can cut them. To Sammy's point, you can almost release yourself of these impeding energies that are impacting your physical, mental, and spiritual well-being.
yeah, yeah. So doing that was a huge tool. I started doing
Mm-hmm.
that daily, morning and evening. And I was also meditating regularly. I was doing my yoga practice regularly, exercising, eating well. You know, I had a pretty good routine
Yeah.
down. And I took more pranic healing classes and I started Arhatic yoga, which kind of dives deeper into your lifestyle and character building.
Right.
So all of that just in a whole created this, I would say, kind of changed lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
And it allowed me to continually start working on myself more and more and discover what's impacting me and what I really truly want.
I think these are really, really helpful tools. You mentioned yoga and meditation. I will link meditation on Twin Hearts. That is something Sammy and I share. Is she also mentioned pranic healing, which is such a beautiful, beautiful study and practice. And I will link more information here. Um, in addition to Sammy's own business, so that the listeners in have that as a tool. You mentioned yoga, briefly touched on nutrition and movement, and sounds like it's the tools that you utilize to kind of get back into this authentic place and really find yourself again unfolded before you. And I think for the listeners, there's no right or wrong path, and your journey is going to be unique to you. But Sammy, I think something you can offer up and I think would be really insightful is, you know, when we're not in alignment, when we're not in our authentic nature, our nervous system responds. And I know for so many women in this community, and myself included, the nervous system, when out of alignment, feels a certain way. And so when we know that we're not in our authentic nature, we can feel it. What, for those who maybe don't know, how can I journey? You know, they can take the tools and try out the tools that you had just mentioned that worked for you. But if they're just in this space of discovery of, whether they're in a relationship or a job or whatever it is that doesn't feel authentically them, they're not in alignment. What does that feel like when you're out of integrity? Like, what could be some signals or signs that the listeners can start to attune their attention to as the starting place? Like, what does that feel like for you when you're out of alignment, when you're out of your authentic nature?
Yeah, when that's really a great question and a great topic to touch on, the nervous system, which reminds me of other tools that I found. So when I am out of alignment, my fight or flight is activated. And your fight or flight response is good. It's really great and it's very useful. It's part of our mammalian brain. It's actually back here. It's at the brainstem, the cerebellum, I believe. And with the way we currently live, a lot of people's fight or flight is very constantly activated, and that feels like, what does it feel like to me? It feels almost like there's this pressure to do stuff, but you just don't know what you're supposed to be doing. And sometimes it can be emotions that don't really seem right for the situation, or maybe you're all of a sudden sweating, or you're really tired for no reason in the middle of the day, or you just can't sleep and you're up all night. These can all kind of be symptoms of this dysregulation of that response, and it's more of a stress response. And that response is very natural and it's supposed to be there because, if you're ever in harm or danger, you want that to activate, you want it to happen so that you can respond accordingly and protect yourself or protect those you're with or run or whatever you need to do to respond to a situation that's actually danger. But sometimes our perceptions deceive us and we think that a conversation or a certain person or maybe a certain topic even are dangers. And I started to recognize when that system would get activated because I'd get really nervous. And sometimes my stomach would start hurting, or I'd get sweaty, or, some of the other symptoms I already named. And it just took being more aware in the moment to start recognizing what was setting that nervous system off. So sometimes you might not recognize it, and that's okay. It's okay to have grace for yourself and to understand, like, wow, I had a whole week. Like I've been there. I had a whole week that I was stressed out of my mind, and I'm exhausted. And your body's working like 100 times more than it should be. That happens. And sometimes we don't realize it until the week's over. We finally calm down, or maybe we wore ourselves out to the point that we just have to sleep, right? That's okay. But in time, you can start to recognize and you can reflect and catch it in the moment and do different techniques that can help you to calm down and to discern whether or not the situation is safe or actually a danger. So one thing that I do when I notice that this is happening is I stop. What is happening? Why is this happening? Okay. And usually you can get your answers there, but sometimes you have to stop and just breathe. And then you have to reason with yourself and reflect. Sometimes you need to stop, go for a walk outside, and you can reason and reflect later. A lot of it is taking care of the symptoms first and then reflecting on the situation, because when you're in that state, it's really hard to reason. It's hard to understand what's going on.
That's helpful. What I'm hearing too is just the power of awareness that sometimes when we're entangled in these states and when we're not in our authentic nature and our nervous systems are turbulent and in fight or flight, and we're just not feeling ourselves. And I think so many tuning in, I mean, so many of us in the world right now are feeling this. We don't know what it is, but we know something is off. And I think it's such a beautiful place to start is to just pull yourself out of it. I always imagine hovering over myself like a bird, like sitting in the seat of awareness. And that's something I learned from Michael Singer, Untethered Soul. That book opened me up. But Samie, you talk a lot about once we have the level of awareness that we're not our mind, we're not our emotions, we are not even our bodies. And this is something that our teacher, Master Cho Koksui, through pranic healing, has taught us that we are a soul. Can you talk a little bit more about that knowing and that teaching, that profound teaching, how that shaped your journey to your authentic self, and who is, you're on this journey, we're all on this journey, and you've come closer and closer to who Samie really is. Can you talk about what that means? Like, who is Samie in her authentic nature and self, and how maybe can the listeners listening in wrap their head around, if this is their first time they're hearing this, like, you are not your anxiety, you're simply feeling anxiety.
Yeah. Uh, Honestly, having had experienced panic attacks and deep anxiety, uh, it can be really hard to discern in the moment that, hey, I'm actually not this emotion, and I don't have to attach to this emotion, and this emotion does not define me. Um, and that can be really challenging in itself just to recognize. But I'm going to reference a book, Achieving Oneness with the Higher Soul. This is by our teacher, Grandmaster Choa Koksui. He's the founder of modern day pranic healing. And this is a very simply written book that just about anyone can understand. And it's a good starting point for, understanding what Bethany said, that you're not the body, you're not the emotions, you're not the thoughts. And these are teachings that the Buddha even taught. And those of you who, follow the Eightfold Path might be aware of this. So a lot of it is back to awareness. And it always starts with the question of what? What am I experiencing? Why am I experiencing this? And how can I take a step back and observe this to understand and let go? And I'm not saying that you have to just, throw your emotions away and not feel them. You can feel them and you can experience them, but you don't have to dwell on them. They aren't you. Like, they're not part of your identity. And how did I really come to understand this? That's a really great question. Growing up as a child who was very emotional and always crying and feeling and expressing so much. I don't know about those of you who are all about the horoscope, but Pisces. Okay. So
We're all about the horoscope here.
so this little Pisces girl was like crying, laughing, jumping around, all kinds of emotions all over the place. And
Mm,
so, really starting to tame the emotional body took a lot of work. Uh, I was very identified with emotions. I was very identified with my body at some points. And a lot of
mm,
that came from outside perspectives. It came from what other people told me growing up. Um, and I think a lot of my understanding of not being the body, the emotions, and the thoughts came from practicing stillness. So, one of my first practices of this came from a book, which I honestly can't remember the name of it, but it was a book about meditation. And I started using it when I was super stressed out, trying to work and manage like my husband's stuff that was going on. Um, so what it had you do was start with your senses. You would sit there and say, "Oh, like I see 5 things. I feel 4 things. I hear 3 things. I smell 2 things. I taste 1 thing." And you just like, you really focus in on each of those senses and you really take your time to go through those. And doing that really separated the experience for me from being a part of me to me viewing it and experiencing it. And that was my first exercise, I would say, in getting to that stillness. And I started at like, I think 1 minute and then 3 minutes and then 5 minutes of just having stillness after that. In this practice, it recommended that you have a grounding word. So if you found yourself getting distracted in that still space, you would have a word that you would say to bring you back. Bring you back. And I would set a timer and I would just practice that. So when I started meditation on Twin Hearts and we would do the practice and then we would go into the stillness and the silence, I had already kind of practiced that. So I would keep pulling myself back in. I'd get distracted, pull myself back in. Nobody's perfect. You're going to have days where you're just like following this thought that goes 10 other thoughts. Um, and that's okay. But it's being aware and starting to have that practice, starting to have that awareness, starting to recognize that when you see a certain person, you experience love and happiness. When you go to a certain place, you get scared. And I don't know if anyone's watched the Emotions movie from, I think it's Pixar. It's just like that. It's just recognizing your different emotions, recognizing thoughts that pass through and how the thoughts can weave and flow into different thoughts, or you can stop them.
mm. That's helpful. I haven't seen the Emotions movie. I've seen the Elements movie. It's just fun. That's a fun one. Stillness. Yeah, these are really insightful tools too, and you've offered up so many. I'd love to dive in. We love to talk about all things soulful entrepreneurship here on the Holistic House podcast and what that really means. And part of my journey and others that are in this community, we talk about really it's only from an authentic place when you're in your being, when you're in your true essence of who you be and who you really are. And you mentioned in the beginning of this podcast that we're all here for a very specific reason. I'd love to hear a bit about your journey coming, I call it the homecoming, coming back to self, who Samie really is. And you've given so many wonderful ways that the listeners can start this process themselves. Now that I see it kind of coming back into the state of homeostasis, coming back into your alignment where more divine energy is flowing through. How has this journey of authenticity for you, Samie, how has it impacted your creativity, your, soulful entrepreneurship, your ways of expression? You talk about these emotions, but instead of sitting with these emotions, really giving them an outlet, a creative outlet, beautiful emotions that are now processing through you in this space. How has the journey to authenticity impacted your creativity, your expression? I mean, there's so much that we could dive into, but yeah, that's my question.
I love that you asked this actually. Um, During this journey, I've used art and song and dance, all different forms of expression. And I found this little girl who used to love singing, and I
Mm.
kind of forgot about her, honestly. Uh, So I'm looking at some paintings I've painted. I started painting kind of as my own form of self-therapy when I was coming out of the anxiety and the depression that I had experienced. And it was also linked to spiritual experiences. So I would paint things that I saw. So I'm just going to show this to you. When I started practicing meditation on Twin Hearts, I randomly decided to paint this.
Wow. Mm.
And this is before taking any pranic healing classes. So I really didn't know what was going on when I was doing the meditation. When I looked at the painting later on, there's a lot of interpretation that you can actually pull from this picture, especially if you like look at all the details.
The light, the gold light.
And it's really funny. It's really interesting how that can happen. So it was a really cool way to start to discover my intuitive self. And it turns out that I had a lot of intuition as a child. I still do now. And it's a lot of knowledge and wisdom is already within you.
Mm.
I'm not saying that we know everything because we don't. But as you start to do work, you recognize uh, just different knowledge and skills that you already have. And maybe you've already had them for a long time. So painting came really naturally to me. And I started singing again. Especially, I went to visit California last fall. And all of a sudden, all these new tunes were coming in my head. I was making voice memos back to back. And it just happened because I was walking by the ocean. I was just enjoying being. And I was alone with nature. That's all I was with. I wasn't with anybody. And my being wanted to sing, and my being connected with its surrounding and the nature and the experience, and beautiful songs flowed out of me. Uh, the songs are incredible. They're about the experience. They're about living, being, the ocean, just being yourself, authenticity. It's really intriguing, actually. I love that you asked that. How the creativity has shown up in my life. I also like to dance around. I wouldn't say that I dance professionally or have any moves that are gonna be uh, all across TikTok or whatever. But I found some songs that really ring true to me, and I've made a playlist. I call it my magnetic playlist, and they bring me back to my truest self, and I love listening to them. They really make me feel empowered, and I like to dance and sing along to those songs. And that's something that I built for me.
I think creativity, the way that I'm seeing this, we talked about some of these other modalities and these tools that you utilized on this authenticity journey, coming back to who Samie really is. unraveling all of these belief systems and ways of being and identity that weren't you, right? In this beautiful discovery process, actually see an ability to almost like reverse engineer this. And maybe this is something the listeners can try on. And I certainly have over even the last couple of years. And that is using creativity, using those nudges, those whispers, those yearning desires, the little fire that's kindling within you, to follow those as a channel, as a catalyst to your authenticity, right? Instead of an example I can give is creating from a space of desiring to just create, as opposed to this like masculine energetic of seeking an outcome. And that could be very inauthentic, right? And so I'm
Yeah.
thinking about creativity as a portal of expression for you to actually find your authenticity, as opposed to, another tool. So if it's that desire to dance, that desire to cook and bake, or to take a walk in nature, or whatever it is, from that true authentic place, without having these notions and these outcomes and expectations, that could be a catalyst and a portal to this homecoming to your authentic self as well. That's how I'm seeing it. And it sounds like you found more of you in those outlets, through painting, through singing, through walking in nature. It's like it's almost amplified, and that the blossoming, the unraveling, the entangling has happened even more so in those portals of creation.
Yeah. And one other portal of creation that really helped me a lot was being a yoga teacher and creating
Mm,
classes. Every class is so unique, and none of my classes are ever the same.
yeah.
And I think that's very special, and it's such a divine opportunity to be in that space where you can guide other beings through the movements, through the asanas, through the pranayama and the breath work, and allow them that space to also flow in their own organic, authentic ways, and find that creativity in their bodies and their movement and their own expression of the guidance that you give them.
Mm. I think it's so important to just get in our bodies. I love that you teach yoga, that you are a yoga instructor, because that, I know a lot of the listeners in this community, the beautiful women, are into yoga. And I think so often in a world today in our culture where we're very much in our mental realm, we're in our minds, we're in our thinking space, that when we get in the body, when we move the body, whether that's on the mat in yoga or going for a walk or whatever, dancing in the kitchen, whatever that might be, is really where we start to integrate those other parts of ourselves. I'd love, this is great conversation, and I'd love to really close with a loaded question, but one I feel is really important to ask, because I've been asking myself in my own homecoming journey back to my authentic nature, that in that journey, that is actually an offering and a gift to humanity, because that energetic radiates to the world, and collectively we're creating change. I'd love to hear from you is, when, not if, when everybody is embarking on this authentic journey, this journey to authenticity, I should say, how does the world change? How do you see, what do you foresee if everybody is embarking on this beautiful journey to authenticity, to their truest, highest expression as a soul, as a collective consciousness, as one with everything, one with God, one with all, which is really my definition of authenticity is realizing that nature. How do you foresee the world changing when we all embark on this journey?
I see a lot of a lot of change.
Mm.
you know. And with change, there is duality. So, there can be deconstructing, there can be stuff that may seem to implode or really disrupt life, uh, but the results can be astounding. And I really see positive impact in the long run, a lot of peace, joy, happiness, fulfillment, and moving into a space where there's more support and less worry,
Mm.
less, I would say, like, less of that. I'm trying to think of the right term for it, but people, taking advantage.
Mm.
More people just being virtuous and kind and being trusting and caring and, wanting the best for one another, even if we don't know each other. And that is a form of unconditional love. And I think it's a lot easier to access that. Our teachers have taught us that your love in your heart is for those you care about around you, like your friends, your family. And the love that you express through the crown of your head is to all beings, to everybody in the world. Um, with that being said, it's a lot easier to access that opening of the crown when you have your basic needs met, when you are happy and you feel safe, because safety stems from our lowest, well, one of our lower chakras. It's called the basic or the root chakra. It's at the base of our spine. And that chakra is also in charge of our well-being, our cell production, and our general health. Similarly to uh, there's in psychology, there's actually a triangle of psychological wellness, and the base of the triangle is just having basic needs met, right? So, in having those basic needs met and expressing yourself as you are is part of those basic needs, believe it or not. Uh, you can start to unlock those other aspects of living that can really allow you to connect and be more open to other people. At least that's my belief. I mean, take it as a grain of salt because this is all speculation. This is all theory, and I don't have any concrete proof behind that. But
Mm. So good. Yeah, the world is shifting, the world is changing, and when we recalibrate and embark on this journey, only goodness can come from that space. Love, your basic needs are met, but so much more. You said peace and tranquility and understanding. Wow, so much to unpack. And for those that are tuning in, what an honor to embark on this journey with you, collectively, and to change the world through this journey back to authenticity. And, Samie, I want to hand it over to you to close and just asking, is there something you want to leave with the listeners that may be a version of you earlier in your journey? Like you just wish you had a mentor or a friend or a sister give you this maybe advice or words of wisdom, or maybe even just a remembrance, right? Something that can awaken within their being. What would that what would that be?
Yeah. Um, you know, even now and in the past, I would have loved to have the guidance to trust yourself. Deep down, if there's something that is continually coming up that you really feel just pushed towards, you feel really guided toward, and you see that it can be a good thing. Maybe there's fear around it, maybe there's doubt, maybe there's worry. There's something that keeps pulling you away from that whatever you're being guided toward. Explore it and try to understand why you have hesitation around it, and maybe just dip your toes in and see what outcome could come of that, because taking a step in that direction might take you off into a journey of the rest of your life, and it could be a very, very fulfilling journey. And you don't have to be stuck. You don't have to stay in a space where you aren't filling your cup. So go explore it. And maybe that's not the path, but maybe it leads to the path that you're really, really looking for.
Time to explore, time to play, time to create. It's a beautiful time to be alive. And goodness, it's such an honor to have you here. And Samie is just a portal of wisdom, and her journey continues to inspire me every day. And I just would love for you, Samie, to offer up the ability for our listeners, for our beautiful sisters here at the Holistic House to connect with you. How can we learn more about your journey and your offerings and what you're creating in this world, the magic you're bringing? How can we find you?
Beautiful sisters and brothers out there. Yes, you can connect with me online. I have both a personal and professional Instagram. I'll share the links with Bethany and she'll add them. I have a website, blissfullylit.com. I have my offerings on that website. If you have any questions, you can inquire through a direct message on there. I also have a podcast on YouTube, See Blissfully-Lit, and I'll share all those links in the description. I'm on LinkedIn.
She's everywhere, guys. She's everywhere.
And feel free to connect with me on Facebook. I'm open to all connections and anyone who wants to share their leg of the journey, because I am creating a podcast space where everyone's story is important, and I want to hear about your story. No matter what leg of the journey you're on, and what you've experienced is significant, and it can help somebody else who maybe has been where you've been or is maybe on their way there.
Yes, so join her in all the ways you feel called and check out her offerings, join her on her podcast. And I have a feeling we will have more episodes. This has been really fun. It's been so fluid and so liberating and inspiring to hear you share your story, Samie, and I'm sure touched somebody who's listening. And so thank you for coming on today. It's such a pleasure always to connect with you.
Thank you so much, Bethany. It's been a pleasure. So much gratitude.
So much gratitude. Take care. Today I am joined by Daniela Burnell, also known as Danny or Moments by Danny. Danny is such an incredible creator. She's such an incredible yoga instructor, a photographer, a videographer, and a really good friend to so many. In this episode, Danny and I talk all about soulful entrepreneurship and really what her journey looked like leaving her safe 9 to 5 corporate experience and diving into the creator that she is and all of the learnings and the lessons along the way. I hope that you are somewhere where you can just take this all in. If this is a season in your life where you're thinking about making the leap and there's something tugging at your heart and your soul to dive into your creative portal and to pursue something that really lights you up, this is the episode for you. I really hope you enjoy this conversation about soulful entrepreneurship and navigating and traversing through that change. This is a conversation that's real, it's raw, it's authentic between Danny and I. Enjoy.